Hi, Helen. Thank you so much for coming on Changeable.
You're very welcome. It's great to be here.
Yeah, it's good to have you. And I'm excited to talk about this topic of authentic expression. Um, and even just as I say that, it's kind of like, even in my mind, like, ooh, what does that mean? It could mean a lot of things. So maybe I'll let you say kind of what it means to you, because I know
Mm.
it's a big thing for you, and you have a whole event that we're going to talk about kind of based around this. So and again, you might not say that phrase in that exact way, but when we're just talking about, yeah, just expressing in the most authentic way,
Mm.
what do you make of that?
Yeah. Well, I'll maybe start actually by saying, yeah, it can be called lots of different things because it might be authentic, it might be aligned, it might be natural. But for me, they're all different words for the same thing, which is really that feeling of being ourself, most fundamentally, being being the way that feels good for us, that feels absent of any kind of hooks or doubts or overthinking, or it's just like little kids, that when we see little kids running around just being themselves, they're not analyzing, they're not questioning, they're not doubting, they're not wondering, is this the right thing to do, and what will people think of me, and will they laugh, and will they think I'm stupid? Of course we collect that then later, but when we begin we don't have any of that stuff. And so for me, that's what all of this journey is about, is us returning to that kind of state of freedom and flow, but with the added bonus of all the learning that we've gathered along the way. So we don't actually want to return to being like an 18-month old, that's not, or a 2-year old, that's not the goal. We're seeing them as that free flowing expression. And we get to include the benefit of all of our years of experience to know that, yeah, there are some boundaries and there are some things that are acceptable and some things that aren't in certain contexts. And that's just part of the game of life. It doesn't say anything about who we are or our worthiness or anything. That's just stuff that we've agreed as how we'll live in this human experience. So yeah, so it really is that feeling of, oh yeah, just it's so comfortable. When people are increasingly in that feeling of authenticity, of alignment, of their natural way of being, it's relaxing, it's relieving, yeah, it does feel comfortable. It's like, oh yeah, this is the stuff I love to do, or the people I love to be with, or the kind of conversations I love to have. And it just feels so right, no matter what the thing is. Um there's no limits around that. I think we can quite often think about, oh, if I'm in my aligned expression, it must mean something very big and fancy, and I'm doing very impressive things in the world that other people think are impressive, at least, and for me it's not that. It's We could be doing anything, we could be talking to anyone. It's That's totally secondary to the fact it's our thing to be doing and our way of talking about it.
Mm. It's amazing how hard this starts to become at some point, given that it's so absolutely natural, nothing
Mm,
added. It just is what's there. But then it's like, even just when you use those, I love like just the really simple examples, like when you want to read a book. Like, but how often does that really happen? I mean, we all know what that's like, of like, oh, I shouldn't be doing this right now, and just all of that garbage. And so how would you say, like, what it is that kind of starts to get in the way? Obviously a lot of conditioned beliefs and expectations and that stuff, but
mm.
is that kind of what takes us away from this?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and I don't really see anything else other than, I do see that conditioning is not just thought based. It is also in the emotional system, it's in the physical system. And yeah, so yes, it's all the conditioning, and it sits at all these different levels. So yeah, as far as I can see it, our only work really, and in fact we were talking about it this morning. I volunteer in Heartfelt Presence, and we were talking about it being this dance between moving towards what lights us up, what really feels good for us, and also understanding and being with this conditioned response. And almost like each time we move towards something, then more of that conditioning becomes visible. So then we go and be with the conditioning. And then, having been with that, it opens up some space again. So then we can move back into the light again, and all the good stuff. And then that brings up more conditioning. So we go back and we, so it's like dancing back and forth, all of it in a loving, from a loving space of, yeah, I love doing this stuff, more of this stuff, and now this stuff. Okay, so we bring love to this stuff. We bring love to that conditioning. We bring love to that confusion in our system that thinks, yeah, I shouldn't be reading a book right now, whatever is driving that.
I mean, even how you just said that is so huge and so not how we're used to thinking of it. Because I can imagine all kinds of people and myself at one point too. Like the conditioning comes up, and that looks like such a problem. It looks like something to battle, or like, or we just get so quickly resigned to like, oh yeah, like here's my guilt again, but just
Mm,
the way you said it, it's so clear. It's like there is nothing wrong. All there ever is just being with what's actually here in this moment.
mm,
Sometimes that will feel like pure joy and alignment. Sometimes that will feel like something that's pushing against that, or, whatever. But I mean, what are we going to do? We either get to fight, or we get to exactly what you said, like just meet what's here and be like, okay, this is here right now. So
yeah,
different.
yeah.
It's so
But
simple. Like it's like life is just bringing it to us.
it is simple, and we know that in the experience of it, when we're very caught in it and very identified with it all, it really does look like it's a problem to be fixed. It really does look like I've got to do something with this. And I don't see that as wrong either. That drive in me to fix this and sort this stuff out brought me to this exploration. It is what's driven me all the way along to find the next thing and the next thing, because nothing was quite getting to it, or something got to this bit, but it hadn't got to that bit. So I really see now as well the perfection of that, like dissatisfaction and dis-ease with what was happening, the feeling that there was something wrong that needed fixing. And in fact, only last year, 23, I came to see that what was underneath all of my experience was this belief that I'm wrong, that I am fundamentally wrong. And so that was what I was meeting last year. And it's had a profound effect, because really everything that was being done was driven from, well, I'm wrong. So I've got to really show that somehow I'm right, somehow I'm okay, somehow I'm acceptable. So much of my words and actions and behaviors had been with that intention, like, please, see that I'm good. And then maybe it will sort out this belief that I'm fundamentally wrong. And of course, that was never going to work. So it's only been by me actually being able to turn around and meet that in myself that's then meant my system's no longer, I'm no longer afraid of that. It's like, if that thought was to come up, that's okay. If that feeling was to come up, that's okay. I can be with that. Whereas really for a lot of my life, I've been running away from it, going, oh my God, what can I do to sort this out? Because I'm really a problem.
Which is
Yeah.
like the power of really seeing that that is conditioning, that is a
Mm.
thought, and it's not a problem to solve. And
Yeah.
we see that, like you said, in so many different ways. A lot of times we just hit a point where we're like, okay, I clearly can't solve this problem, which leads
Mm.
us to be like, well, and then we could maybe see, well, maybe that's because it isn't a problem to be solved. But my version of that, not that I'm wrong so much, but that I'm not okay. So
Mm.
everything, like I couldn't read a book because I should be doing something else to make sure I'm okay later. And
Mm.
I think there's only a handful of these. Like I feel like
Yes.
these
Yeah.
themes are so universal,
Yeah.
and it's so helpful for people to know we all have that. You cannot avoid this because stuff
Mm.
happens,
Mm.
and our little kid minds just, try to make a solution around it.
Yeah.
So that's huge. But yeah, to see like you, like, oh, okay, so my mind's constantly wanting to do stuff for later and make sure I'm
Mm.
safe, and like collect all this stuff around me to keep me okay. And when I could see that that's all that's happening, and that me doing those things wasn't actually helping my safety at all, it had nothing to do with that, then just like you said, it's like, oh, okay, now I can read a book, feel the discomfort, and just sit there and feel that discomfort without having to run
Mm.
around and do something to prevent it. And it
Mm.
just can't, like, it's like it's kept alive in large part by all of our acting, which kind of, gives
Mm.
it this power. Not that it won't still show up, but so different. I know you've seen that too. Like it can show up and like, oh, there's that. It just is
Mm.
a completely different
Mm.
experience.
Yeah. Really, really that shift in relationship with it.
Yeah.
Yeah. absolutely, like you said at the beginning of that, it's like it's knowing that this is universal. There is a very small number. The Enneagram is actually a great summary of those universal core beliefs that we carry as humans. There are 9 Enneagram types, so you can take your pick from which of those 9 is predominant for you. And predominant because we all have all 9. It's just that one will be emphasized a bit more. And yeah, it just sits there lurking quietly because we don't even know it's there, like until we see it. And it's the same with every layer of belief or conditioning that we move through. We don't know what's under it until we've been with and loved and sat with ourselves in the kind of one above it. It's only in the dispersing of that that then we go, oh, and now look at this one. This one's now become available to be seen. And that for me is the perfection of all of this, because it gets revealed and revealed and revealed, which is why I also then in the flip talk about how our aligned expression or our authentic expression gets revealed and revealed. I don't know if it ever ends. I don't know if we ever get to a point where we go, oh, good, I'm 100% revealed in my aligned expression now. I don't know. Maybe we spend the rest of our lives in this and we keep uncovering more layers. I don't know. All I know is that I've seen the layer that I've seen, and I wait, and I know that if there's something else to be seen, that'll become evident for me, and absolutely for me. It's not to me, it's not against me, it's not, there's nothing, yeah, as you said before, there's no problem here, there's nothing wrong. It's like, right, here I am, here's the next one to yeah, to be loved and dispersed and reveal more alignment.
I think it's easy sometimes to get caught up in that stage, like you just said, of like what it means to be in what's here and like just feel it. Cause I mean, I know I used to wonder so much about that. Like, well, what do I do? Do I write down the beliefs? Do I analyze it? How do I sit with my feelings? So
Mm.
just really briefly, I wonder how, like, if you could just share how that looks for you.
Mm. Yeah, so to begin with, and in fact, I know I'm going to talk about the event shortly, but that sort of mirrors my journey. And most of the people who I work with, it mirrors their journey of starting at the psychological. So things like you've done so much around thought and loved your book. Just a thought, loved running the book group on that. Yes, such an impactful summary, like so concise about the nature of the mind and the nature of thought. And so that Byron Katie's work was also very powerful in terms of that psychological level of experience. And that was really my first doorway. I'd come from a psychological coaching background, so thinking and, and trying to sort my thinking out so that I could have the right feelings, so I could have the right experience, was very much where I came from before finding 3 principles and yeah, people like yourself. And so all of that then really lightened that psychological experience, really helped me instead of just accepting it and going, oh wow, this is bad, this is a problem, I'd best fix it. It really shifted that into the dispersing of the thoughts rather than the sorting out of them. And then when the more emotional levels became available, that was much more about tuning inwards. So kind of being in more meditative state and tuning in, which initially was purely just about being in the sensation of the feeling, or of the emotion, or in the physical sensations, if that's what was there, just being in that raw experience of it. And then latterly, it's moved deeper into actually being in conversation with those energies, speaking to them and understanding their perspective, and being able to bring adult wisdom to them, because they are often very childlike and very confused and very stuck, with anything that's got stuck in our system and is going round and round those same loops again and again, just fixed on, well, this is how it is and this is how it has to be. So being able to communicate with it and bring insight, bring that wisdom, like as if I'm coaching my inner world, bringing guidance to my inner world. And that, yeah, that's been amazing to move into that space, and all of which has been supported by awakening. So all of what we're talking about here, that for me is all the enlightenment process. But awakening gave or reminded me of the spaciousness that we are, reminded me of that unconditional love that we are, reminded me of the fact that none of this stuff is really who I am. And so that disidentification and what just turns into love of all of this stuff, that really made such a difference in being able to get closer to it. It's like, now that I know it's not really me, now I can move towards it, which is why then the spiritual angle of enlightenment also comes in, because to know truly who we are, and that spiritual nature that we are, does really, for me, it superpowers anything we're going to do in the enlightenment space. To know that I'm not just this limited human, I'm so much more than that. I'm all of this, and yeah, my true nature is not just this.
Yeah. So is that what you mean by awakening when you say it? It's like well, yeah, tell me like how, like, what do you mean by that recognition?
Yeah, purely the recognition of our essential nature, and importantly, the nature of that nature, because we can recognize that awareness is our most fundamental aspect of our experience, the most direct, that which never changes, that which we never had to learn. You know, all the stuff we've talked about so far, we've learned all that conditioning. We never had to learn to be aware. You know, nobody ever had to take us to school for that.
Yeah.
So recognizing that most essential aspect of us, but recognizing its nature means also recognizing that it is infinite. It's not contained within this body. I have no evidence that it's just in this brain, or even that it's generated by this brain. The neuroscientists can't even show us that it's generated by the brain. Nobody can, and I don't believe they ever will, because who we are is prior to the brain. Who we are is more fundamental to the brain. So to recognize that eternal, infinite nature of who we really are, to then know that, yeah, who we are as a human is that in form, you know, and right now, let's look at this human experience then. Now let's understand this human experience, knowing that it's not really who I am, but blooming heck, I want to have a good time being this, you know. If I'm going to be here as this human, let's make it fun, let's make it enjoyable, let's make it a great experience.
I love how you talk about this at all of those levels. And I think I'm so excited for the event that you're going to talk about, because now I'm like really seeing how you have it laid out. I'm like, oh my God, this is so good. But because I think, Ian, you said it really early on in our conversation too, that the conditioning is not just thought-based conditioning. It's at the level of the physical, energetic, everything. I've seen a lot about that in the last year or so. And I think that's just, I mean, I won't even say it's important. That doesn't seem like a big enough word. It's absolutely like vital, like it, because it is
Yeah,
all one system. And we
yeah.
can have our favorites, and I for sure have my favorite. Usually our favorites are where we've been most hung up, probably, right? So I've had a lot of big insights around thoughts, and I love to talk about that, but that is not it.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
what
yeah.
even is thought, and where even is the boundary between thought and feeling? We don't even know, right? So
Mm,
so
yeah,
like you're saying, like to just like to that we feel into this stuff, and that it kind of, life meets us now, a guide, and your summit and teachers and all of that can be incredibly helpful in this regard.
yeah.
But even just meeting what's here, maybe first it is thought, and then we kind of get into the body a bit, and then we start to
Mm,
communicate with it like you do. And
mm,
it's just amazing, yeah,
mm,
how much wisdom there is, and how I think a little bit of curiosity and openness and maybe some good pointing kind of just
mm,
starts to unravel the whole thing. And it's very
mm.
multifaceted.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. And I don't know about you, Amy, but I've really seen how I've been kind of moved to the next thing every single time. And I see that for my clients as well. It's like, right, I've seen this bit, I've worked in this way, or I've understood from that angle. And like you said, it's not quite it. So then something else has appeared on my path. Another teacher or somebody else pops up in my YouTube, or a friend mentions a book, or something. It just it's happened every single step of the way, that it's like, here you go, Helen, here's the next thing that you're ready to move on to. And it's and I don't know if that's the same for everybody. I know
Yeah.
for some people there's more of a single track journey, and that's not wrong. we're all different. My human design is manifesting generator, which means I'm naturally inclined towards pick and mix and magpie. Ooh, bright and shiny, bright and shiny. You know, I'm always curious about this multifaceted thing and all the different possible doorways. But for me, again, it doesn't really matter. You will get what's right for you. You will get what's perfect for you because that's how it's designed.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, and it's cool to start to see that that's been going on because I feel the exact same. And like anything in life, there have been times I think where this has felt like I went through a period for a few years where I was very frustrated because I felt like I was the old stuff that had helped me wasn't landing anymore, but I hadn't
Mm,
really found like the new thing. And that
mm,
I felt like I was in that period for a while.
right.
And then now I feel like kind of like what you're saying, it's like everywhere I turn, there's something that's adding on and it's like really rapid and it can be tempting to prefer the rapid and that's fine, right? But I mean, it's just like anything in life. It just seems to just have its own pace and it's
Mm,
cool to see that and just trust it a little bit.
mm. That's such a good point. That's such a good point because you know, like how easily we can look to people like Eckhart Tolle or Byron Katie or these people who've had really like huge awakenings and huge shifts in their experience. Sid Banks, you know, another classic one where we'll go, oh gosh, amazing, amazing. And then we start to try and measure ourselves against somebody else's experience and go, oh well, it mustn't be working for me because it's not on the same time scale as them or the same magnitude as them or whatever stuff we make up. And just to really emphasize that everybody's journey is so unique. And you can't, although we can, I mean, guess like mine and Sarah's book, you know, we can lay out maps, we can say, here's the kind of path you're going to walk, but we can't know what your unique journey is going to be like. We can't know what detours you might make. We can't know if you're going to stop here for some lunch and dinner and breakfast, or whether you're just going to stop off for a cup of tea. You know, it's like it's gonna be what it's going to be. Um, and the more we can ease into that and yeah, be with our unique journey rather than wishing we had their one over there, all the easier because we very back to the beginning of what you very first said, you know, then we're with our experience just as it is, rather than wishing it was something else.
Yeah, and acknowledging that this isn't always like feeling good,
Oh
which I
yeah,
think, you know,
yeah,
probably many listeners know by now, but I know when I first like even when I first came across the principles, I thought it was just like progressively better and better. Listen
yeah,
for a feeling. Like you should always be feeling better is how my mind heard that, you know, and
yeah,
definitely has not been my experience. I don't think it's anybody's experience because like you
mm,
said, we have to sit with the conditioning. We're
mm,
we're clarifying, so stuff comes up to be seen and clarified. But when we have that awakening or that sense that this is not who I am,
mm,
that's what I think makes it so much easier. And in a weird
mm,
way, it's like more stuff than ever can come up, but we
yeah,
also have the capacity to be with it that we didn't think we had
yeah,
before.
yeah, totally, totally. And yeah, it can be challenging for sure. It's a terrible marketing strapline.
This might hurt. Won't always be fun.
Yeah. But then I kind of also think if we come to it, we come to it. Like if we come to it, it's because it's for us. I've seen, and trust me, I've tried many times in years gone by to convince people that this is the kind of exploration they should be in. You know, in my early days, just after what I'd seen with the three Ps and my initial awakening, it's like, oh my God, everybody needs to know this. Everybody should be in this exploration. We must tell everyone, 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 listen, listen. Um, but it's not for everyone. You know, it took me quite a long time to kind of make peace with that and go, yeah, it's not for everyone. And when people are called to it, then amazing, because we've got an incredible myriad of people, approaches, modalities. There's something for everyone. And thank the Lord for the internet that makes it all so much easier to access and to find the right people. And then people who aren't interested, no worries. You know, my husband still has my book sat by his bed unopened. It's totally fine. It's not his path. So, and again, for a while, I really thought that he should be interested in this stuff. It's like, no, that's not for him, at least not right now. And if it changes, then great. And if it doesn't, then that's perfectly fine too.
Yeah.
And I think that's part of what for me is why when it gets tough, it's like, yes, it does. And we kind of have no choice. Like, I don't know about you again, but I and people I talk to, it's like, gosh, this is hard. And well, what else would we be doing? Like, if you ever try and imagine stepping off the ride, it's like, oh, I have no idea how I'd do that.
Mhm.
Number of times especially in the early days, where my mind was very doubtful. It was, Helen, what are you doing? This is ridiculous. What's all this stuff you're getting into? Or if I felt like I'd binge watched too much stuff on YouTube about three P's or non-duality, be like, oh, I'm done with this. I'm not doing this anymore. And then within like an hour, there I'll be back. Next article, next YouTube, next podcast. Because it was like, yeah, no, this is the direction. There's nowhere else for me to go.
Yeah, that's exactly my experience. And it's funny because I remember so many times kind of hearing my mind say like, enough, I'm done with this. This is stupid.
Yeah.
I don't want to do this anymore. And then exactly like you're saying, it was always be immediately followed by like you have a choice. It's just, but again, there's something very maybe scary, but also kind of cool in that. It's like somehow we ended up on this ride and we didn't put ourselves here and we can't get ourselves off. But you can trust that. I think, maybe you don't. That's fine too. But
Yeah.
I don't know. I feel like in the bigger picture, like there's something in that. It's
Yeah.
like, okay,
Yeah.
it isn't for everyone, but when it is for you, you tend to know it.
Yeah. And you know what you'd said about looking for the good feeling at the beginning and thinking it would all be better, better, better. My experience is that it gets better. It's just quite bumpy on the way.
Yeah.
And so there's lots of oscillation on the way, of yeah, openings and then contractions again. But it does feel like it's on an upwards trajectory of, yeah, increasingly, yeah, I guess increasingly that feeling of being ourselves, all the way back to authentic expression, being who we really are, but being who we are as this human as well.
I love that like just feeling of being yourself and how simple that is too. And just yeah, looking at kids and it's just not even a question yet. Um in what you said early on too, when I asked kind of what's in the way of it, and it's like,
Mm,
well, I mean, in some ways a lot of conditioning at all these different levels, but in other ways like not much, just some conditioning at different levels. It's like it's
mm,
incredibly simple what is in the way, and even in the way is kind of a maybe not accurate way of saying it. It's just what comes up and grabs our attention. And
mm,
um but I want like one thing in particular I wanted to ask you about that I've gone through and that I see people go through is when it comes to actual expression like with other people too. I think that can be a particularly sticky point when we start to
mm,
see that. I mean, I could say to you, like, there are no other people. I might not say that to everybody, but like when we really kind of start to see that, like, this is all here. That my gripes with my husband, when I really look at that, it's the exact same feeling of powerlessness that I felt when I was 5 with my parents. It is not about
right,
him. Yet it
right.
comes out very much in the context of something he apparently did wrong.
Mm,
And so it can be a weird in between sometimes where it's like we kind of see what's behind the curtain a bit, yet we're in a relationship with someone, and when they
mm,
do the same thing over and over and all this angst comes up, what do you do with that? So I know there's not
mm,
a direction you can tell us, but I'm curious just what you see in that
mm.
kind of messiness.
Yeah. So what's coming up for me and the way it went for my journey was a long period of time where the mirror was turned back to me. So whatever was happening in relationship with the other, there was there was always a right, what's me in this? What's my part in this? Like you say, with your childhood conditioning coming up with your husband, it's like, okay, what's this reaction in me that's creating this experience with this person? So there was probably a good couple of years, maybe longer, where it was always that turn around, turn around, turn around to look at myself, hold that mirror up, and not infallibly. There were plenty of times when I also reacted rather than first of all pausing and doing that that inquiry. Um, and those reaction moments were also very instructive. So there was one time when I'd gone into my husband I can't remember exactly what had happened, but something in relation to our son. And I was quite frankly judging him and saying, "You're so harsh on him. You shouldn't be like that with him. It's not what he needs. He needs love. And you're being so critical and you're being so judgmental." And he literally looked up from his cup of tea and he went, "What are you being with me right now?" And I was like, "Oh,
See, that's why
yeah."
he doesn't need to read your book.
That's why he doesn't need to read my book.
He's good.
So and it was such a pivotal moment for me of like, oh my God, like it in terms of our relationship, it was like, oh, you are so right. And just the like the way he delivered it, like a great joke. The delivery of the punchline, it was like, wow, yeah, okay, I hear you. So there's no wrong turns. My mind in that moment, and or at least quite soon after, it was like, yeah, you did the wrong thing, Helen. You shouldn't have done that. You're supposed to be better than this. You shouldn't have reacted like that. But actually, that reaction and his response was incredible. It had such an impact. I've told this story a number of times because it had such an impact on me in that moment. So as much as yes, we do the work in terms of clearing up our own system and loving ourselves and integrating everything within ourselves so that we're not fearful of our own experience, be kind with yourself along the way as well, because there is no wrong turn. Whatever happens, it's going to give you something. Either it's going to be that lovely aligned expression and it's going to be amazing, or it's going to feel awful, and then that's going to give you a route in to the next point of inquiry at whatever level that's being called for. So yeah, it's and as that's happened, then I see it is again that we clear in ourselves, and then more aligned expression gets revealed. Not because I'm trying to be aligned, not because I'm trying to be authentic. It's just that's all that's left when we're no longer caught up in the conditioned stuff.
I think that's so good. And it points to something that we can get caught up in, which is like kind of what you said, doing it right, doing it right,
Mm,
whatever that means, like
mm.
preventing or like all the thinking about, well, I shouldn't even put this on him, but like all of that. And it's
Yeah,
like, no,
yeah, yeah,
we
yeah.
have to just jump in and let life keep unfolding. You're not stuck anywhere. So your partner gets mad at you, big deal. Like, then you
Mm,
move on, right? There's the next moment coming. Like, it's just,
mm,
that's where that just learning and
mm.
just kind of working it out seems to come from.
Yeah, 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 yeah. Being in it, being in the experience of it,
Yeah.
and knowing that there's something else available than just the face value of the exchange.
I
Yeah.
remember hearing in the principles early on, because they talk about this a lot, like not having these conversations until you're kind of in the right state of mind and all of that.
Mm,
Like kind of seeing your own state of mind and waiting. And that's great when you can do it. But I also remember being like, forget that, because when like, not when I'm super in a super caught up state, but there's a lot of times where there's some friction. I am not in a clear mind, but that's when it's actually helpful to have those conversations. And I'm still kind of in this janky part of this, to be honest, with communicating with my husband, but it's like I can kind of be like, okay, I know there's a lot of my stuff coming up in this right now, and this about you,
mm, mm.
and that's okay. Like
Yeah,
it's
yeah,
not the cleanest, most beautiful, kind of communication that our mind idealizes, but it's real and it's just
mm,
is. And just like you said, there's a lot that comes out of that. I find that
yeah,
often as soon as I say that, it's like a weight is lifted and now I can see more clearly. Whereas if I
yeah,
sit around and wait for that to happen on its own without saying anything, who knows? So
yeah, yeah,
yeah, it's cool that it
yeah,
just is going to be messy, maybe forever. But I love what you're saying of like just dive in and life will clarify it for you.
yeah. There's such an important piece in what you've just shared, though, in that ownership of your own experience.
Yeah.
Because I guess our habitual, and like it was for me in the example I just shared, the habitual thing has just been instantly to blame out there. Oh, it's just totally them and it's totally their problem. And if only they would be different, then I would be okay. So there's such an important shift in what you've just shared, which is that shift into ownership of this is my experience right now. I'm feeling like this, and I don't love this, whatever it is. Now the conversation moves from there, which is a much more honest place and a much more truthful place than it's all them and it's all their problem and they're the one that needs to to change, or that circumstance needs to change.
Mm.
Even that I need to change, that we can put ourselves in that other category as well in some circumstances. So the more that we can, begin from that place of ownership and know that, that there is another there who we're in relationship with. Sometimes people have changed as I've changed. As I've cleared something up, then they've shown up as an entirely different person. But that's not always happened. And for me, there's a respectfulness in that of, I guess, like I said with my husband in the book, that's fine. He's having his unique experience that he's here for. My job is to pay attention to my experience and see what comes from that. And I'm responsible for this one.
Yeah.
And sharing that, like you said, you're potentially messily, potentially not how the mind would imagine it, but still, honestly, at least as it looks right now.
Yeah. And it's just awesome how that that gets better and better. I don't mean it gets better and like clearer and more spiritual. I just mean that even the messiness, the honesty in that is like, wow,
Mm,
this is life. It kind of takes us
mm,
full circle to sitting with the conditioning, not like, oh, this shouldn't be here. It's like, no, this
mm.
this is what's here.
Yeah,
Yeah. It's just very, very authentic. Very, just feels
yeah,
very true.
yeah, yeah.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for this conversation. I love it.
Thank you.
I think we just hit on a lot of really big stuff. So tell us a little bit about the event coming up that I'm super excited to be part of. Um, I love how it just obviously because it's on your mind, so this is how you think about this stuff. But yeah, I love how we just kind of gave some little sneak previews in this conversation of kind of what it's going to be about. But yeah, say a little bit
Yeah.
about what it is.
Yeah, amazing. Thanks, Amy. And I know that you're planning for this episode to go out on the 29th of January, which is just a couple of days before the first video is going to land for the event. So there's still plenty of time. In fact, let me tell you more about the event because there is a whole 10 months worth of good stuff coming up. So people may or may not be aware, we've had a summit during January 17th to the 19th. And it was kind of like a precursor to this main event, which is starting end of Jan into Feb. And what we're doing is providing an enlightenment pathway. So it's called the Enlightenment event with the purpose of revealing your aligned expression. And each month is based on a theme. So like you say, I kind of gave a little snippet in that conversation, because this pathway that I'm sharing is essentially kind of my pathway, give or take a little bit. But what we're doing is we're starting with make it visible. So that first stepping stone, which really connects to what we've just said about honesty, we have to first of all know and acknowledge what it is in our experience that is ready for enlightening. Like we have to first of all know what is the conditioning that's in my system, what is the next thing that's coming up for that loving attention. So we begin our journey in this program with make it visible. So with a couple of experts, one of whom I know your audience will be very familiar with, Claire Diamond and Nikki Drew, who are helping with that make it visible stage, so that everyone's given ways of seeing their experience so that they know, okay, what is here for me. You might already know it, then that's cool. But it's bringing that opportunity. Then we're going to move through these stages of deepening enlightenment. So psychological enlightenment with yourself and Grace Bell, emotional enlightenment, physical enlightenment. So all different modalities and ways of coming into relationship with the experience, like we've talked about. And then spiritual enlightenment, which is at the end of the path in this. For me, it's kind of woven all the way through it on my own journey. But as a home, it comes at the end of this path, because sometimes, in fact, that is people's experience, that as they lighten the psychological, the emotional, the physical, then the spiritual nature of who we are can become more visible. It's kind of like we've cleared enough muck off the lens that now we can see more easily the truth of who we are. So having gone through those psychological, emotional, physical layers, we then move into spiritual enlightenment. And then we end with holistic enlightenment, which is some modalities and approaches and ways of being that really can't be emphasized into any of those previous categories. So that's the initial 6 months of the program, 1 month per theme. Each theme gets an initial setup context call, a deep dive workshop with each expert, and then an open Q&A call at the end of the month. So across the month, you get 4 good chunky calls, as well as lots of community discussion and conversation in the middles, and access to the summit recordings. So if people have missed the summit, then no worries, because you get all that included as well. But the thing that I love the most about this is that you have a choice of how you want to join this program, because you might look at it and go, I want all of that. I want to walk through every single step of that journey and meet each of these experts and move through each of these modalities, which are all going to be very practical workshop sessions. You know, I love making things real. And intellectual learning is lovely, and that doesn't change your life. So each of these workshops is going to actually give you practical experiences of each expert's approach, modality, tool, technique. So you have 6 months of that, and yeah, you might want to just dive in for the whole thing. After that 6 months, we move into integration, we move into reconnecting to all the modalities and celebrating at the end of August. So there's the option to, sorry, end of October. So there's the option to buy the whole lot. I'm all in for the full 10 months, and I want to go on this full journey and have the whole thing. But there's also the option to pick and mix, because not everybody wants everything. Some people might be, let's say like you know, you might have come a few years ago thinking, well, yeah, I know the psychological stuff, totally nailed that. So I want to come and join the emotional and the physical and see what all that stuff's about. So it also has the freedom for people to come and join the months they want, and just be in that free flow of come for this, leave for that month, come back for this month, leave for that month, come back for the last 3 to do some integration. And you know, it's very fluid, so that people can really tailor it to their own unique path, you know, whatever is right for them. So with that, I really therefore hope that it gives a full range of options that, yeah, as I say, people can make it work exactly as they want to need it to. And yeah, have a great time revealing more of their aligned expression.
Yeah, I love it. I'm getting excited listening to you talk about it. And I think, I mean, I love that people can come in and out and focus where they want. But also just like the experience of doing the whole 10 months. I mean,
Mm,
just to hear you talk about it, it's like, and you said this, it's kind of like you kind of are doing the whole thing in a cycle. It's like you see some stuff about thought, then you go into feeling, then more thought comes up because now you're feeling. And then you go
yeah,
into, like so it's like stuff's going to come up as it needs to. So I think for
yeah,
people who are maybe a little bit newer to this or just want the whole experience, man, that whole 10
yeah,
months is just going to be incredible. There's no way someoe's going to do this and feel like the same at the end of 10 months. And
yeah.
I love how you have it set up too, where um, we're learning some tools and some ways of working with this stuff on our own. And
Mm,
then again, yeah, you just are going to take this through life because there's always going
mm,
to be a belief come up or a feeling or something. And so to have some real concrete tools to be able to kind of take is really important.
yeah, yeah, definitely. Yeah, and I really, I'm a big fan of smorgasbord options, of pick and mix options. As I said before, it's been my journey, but and it's also often what people value who come into my world, because to me there isn't just one way, and we never know what the next thing is going to be that might just get to that next little nook that we hadn't realized was available for some more love. Um, yeah, so I do really. I guess what's coming up in my head is that phrase from the 3 Ps: if you don't have to do anything. For me, that means you don't have to do anything. You can do anything, and here's a whole bunch of stuff that's available for you to, yeah, proactively move towards it. Do something concrete, like you say. Yeah, it was important to me through my journey to do that, to not just have to sit and wait and hope and cross my fingers that one day I'm going to have, you know, an amazing insight.
Yeah.
I would rather move towards it. I would rather do something proactive and,
Yeah.
yeah,
And you don't
on
have to do
purpose.
any one thing, but I love this too. It gives them such a menu of like, just do like you said earlier, you kind of can't help it. You're going to be called towards certain things. If somebody's
Mm,
listening
mm,
and they're interested in this, you're going to know what you're called towards. So it just, yeah, why not?
yeah,
Awesome. Well, I'll
yeah.
share all the links and all the details
Thank you.
for everyone. And I really encourage everyone listening to check it out. I'm excited to do it. And yeah,
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah, amazing.
thank you
Thanks so
so
much, Amy.
much
And
for
thank
this.
you so much for being part of it as well, because yeah, it's wonderful you bring in your expertise to it too.
Yeah, I'm honored to be part of it. Thank you. And thanks for this
Nice.
conversation.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, and yeah, see you in the summit.
See you. Yeah, see you there. Lots of love.
All right. Thanks,
Take care.
Helen.